Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Colleen Simonds. I'm an interior designer in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Welcome to my house and come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Well, welcome to our house. We love living here. I've lived here with my husband, Henry, and my two sons, John and George, for about 7 years. We moved here from New York City. My husband and I are both from Pittsburgh originally, and after living in New York for a long time, we decided to come back. And it's been wonderful. We're so happy to be here, and we're so happy in our house. The house itself was a big project, bigger than we initially anticipated, as often happens. But this is an old home. I think it was built around 1911, so it's over 100 years old. And when we first saw it, I loved it because really the high ceilings. We have 10-foot ceilings in here, and we have them on the second floor too. And I think that was the first thing when I first walked in that I noticed. You know, that's something that just sets a tone for a house that you can't really decorate around, or you can't create higher ceilings with design. So it's just one of those structural things that makes a really big difference in how a house feels. So that, I think, was my first kind of impression of the house. It's a pretty typical kind of center hall colonial style house. It's sort of just a square. And when we first saw it, we just had it was sort of laid out in 4 parts. The kitchen was over here with a small dining room, a living room here, and then the staircase, and that was kind of it. Cosmetically, really here, what we kind of did is I did want the house to feel a little bit more contemporary. I knew when I first saw it that it was kind of a blank slate, and it could take on a little bit of a different feel. Again, when we first saw it, it had white siding and green shutters with like little hearts on them. It just felt a little more colonial, but I could see the potential. I could see that it sort of had the potential to be something a little different and a little more contemporary. There were a lot of applied moldings that were not original, that had been added somewhere along the way. I took all of those down. I just wanted to clean it up. We have all new doors and windows, which also made an enormous difference in how the house feels. Also, people come in here and they talk about how quiet it is. We live on kind of a busy street, but it is really quiet in here. It feels pretty peaceful. I think those are the new windows. But the new windows and doors gave it a more modern feeling. Here in the entry, a few things that caught my eye first. By the front door, which is obviously original to the house, and I loved. And that kind of frames this entry, niche, vestibule, whatever you want to call it. It just makes for a really nice kind of moment because you're separating this sort of from the rest of the room. So I do use a lot of wallpaper in my work, and this felt like a really good opportunity to do something that was colorful. It sort of sets the tone for the whole house right when you walk in. I use a ton of color in my home, and I want to kind of just establish that from when you first walk in the front door. I love how colorful this paper is. The greens that really speak to the outdoors. Since you're right here, you're sort of seeing them both together. You're looking outside, but this is right here, so they really connect in that way. And it just kind of frames this doorway. And for anyone that comes in, it's like, okay, I'm gonna set the tone of the house right here. This is my home, it's colorful, it's not super serious, but it has some visual impact, and that's really what I was trying to do. So then moving into the rest of the entry, you can see that all of the walls here, I think this is Super White by Benjamin Moore, is the paint color. And this is the paint color throughout the house. Since I do use so much color and pattern in the furnishings, the carpets, art, sometimes it's nice to just have sort of a blank canvas for all of those things. And I like that kind of clean background. I know people think that I wallpaper every room I ever come in contact with, which is maybe true. But I do also like sometimes to just have that kind of clean slate when you do have a lot of other interest in things in the rooms. Sometimes you need like a quieter background or sort of like a quieter moment for your eye to kind of take it all in. So, and here too, one thing to think about is when you have these sort of open spaces, if you start wallpaper here, you don't really have anywhere to stop it. So then it's all the way through your second floor. And sometimes that works, but sometimes it's too much of something. So here I just felt like, okay, the main kind of artery of the house, we're just gonna keep it really clean, white, bright. We have a lot of nice natural light in here, but I wanted the house to feel nice and bright. Pittsburgh has a lot of gray days, so you don't want to paint your walls gray here. That's not the right move. But the white just felt really clean and fresh, and just a great sort of neutral backdrop. I love leopard. You can maybe see that here. We have this leopard runner that goes all the way up to the third floor. I'll tell you a few reasons I love this. First of all, it's incredibly durable. It's a wool runner. I have 2 boys and a husband. This house is busy, it is active. And frankly, I think the runner looks as good today as it did when we installed it 7 years ago. It really doesn't show anything. If you choose a dense pattern like this in sort of a medium color, this isn't too light, it'll hide a lot of sins. So, and it's just, again, it's a little bit playful. It's not that serious. And it works with everything else. So that's our runner. And we have some art here. This is actually art that my husband, Henry, this is his art, these super balls. This was a big project of his a few years ago. And so they're really big, and this is a perfect spot for them. We have these really cool drawings of my 2 kids, my 2 boys, that are actually all done in pen, which is unbelievable that they can be like this with using only a pen. The artist is so talented. So those are a couple of my favorite pieces in here. So now we're going to move into the sort of combined living room and dining space, and we'll start over here in the living area. So this is kind of a long rectangular room. Sometimes when you have rooms like this or spaces like this, it works to sort of divide it into zones. So here, this is really our living room and our family room and our den, and all in one. Everything that you would do in that kind of a space we do here. This is our main TV. So my kids are lying in here on the couches watching TV and eating on them and making a mess, and so everything kind of happens here. Again, you can see here that I use a lot of color in my design. I did work in fashion for a long time before I moved into interiors, and when I worked at J. Crew in New York, I think that's really where my love for color was fostered even more. J. Crew is so known for color and the beautiful color combinations, and it's like a whole study of color. It's like I could write a dissertation about color. Color is my other language. And so I am just particularly attracted to certain tones, certain shades. I can see something, I could see a fabric, I could see a paint color and just say like, oh, I just know I love that. I just respond to it immediately. And that's what I encourage my clients to do too. When we look at paint swatches or fabric swatches or wallpapers, whatever, if you just have that gut reaction, that immediate reaction to something, just listen to that. That means that you love it, and you don't really even need to know anything else. Like if you love it and you want to live with that, it makes you happy. It's also scientific and biological. Living in certain colors, with certain colors, or in rooms that are certain colors, it affects your mood. It affects this is all real. And so I just really subscribe to that. So I want to live with color that I love. And for me, I guess that's a lot of colors. I love blues, I love pinks, I love all of these tones. To me, they feel optimistic. They feel, I don't know, they just set a tone in here that I just always respond to. So the first piece that I started out with in here was the rug. And sometimes I do that in projects too, not all the time, but sometimes a rug is a very good starting point. It's obviously the sort of the foundation for your room. So this rug is from Joseph Carini in New York, and I had seen a different colorway of it in a magazine, and I I was really drawn to the geometry of it, but also that it's sort of soft too. The rectangular pattern, it's not a perfect rectangle, right? So it has that softness, but it's graphic and it's strong in its way, and it's going to set a tone. And that was the first, so I had not designed this room at all. I just saw this rug and I went to the showroom. I looked at it and then I chose the colors. You can do any color you want. I chose the colors and that was it. And so it was like, all right, well, this is going to be the first thing here, and then I'm going to figure out all the other things around it. And my process for doing that is that then I start playing with other color swatches, fabric swatches. Okay, what colors do I like with this sort of pinky, mauve-y color in the carpet? What do I think works with that? Well, okay, then I was loving the blue with that. So I was like, okay, well then what are the big pieces in the room? Then you always have to think about your furniture pieces. What are the biggest pieces? What's going to register the most? So in a room like this, it's probably your sofas, right? So it was like, okay, well then what's the sofa going to be? Well, I love how this blue mohair is kind of looking with this pinkish wool in the carpet. So, okay, so then maybe that's our first point of combination. And then it's like, well, okay, where am I going to get some pattern? This is sort of a combination of floor planning and layout plus scheming with fabrics. So then it was like, well, this really playful, another sort of leopard. You can see I do like leopard. Here works really nicely too with the carpet. This is also playing with sort of positive and negative spaces. Now the carpet has like the light ivory ground, this sort of dark gray ground. Those balance each other well. So I was like, okay, well then these are going to be the chairs. These are vintage chairs that I had found one of. We made a second. So that's how the scheme in here started to come together. We had this ottoman in our old apartment. I think we recovered it for here. This is just a big soft hide. I like this because there's no sharp edges. My kids can roll around on it or jump on it or whatever, and it's going to be indestructible. So that has held up. So this is the one thing that I did change a couple years ago after I've changed nothing here in like 7 years. I think this is the only thing I've changed. I had another blue sofa here, but this fabric is a Joseph Frank fabric that I absolutely love. I love the brightness. I love the pattern. I love the colors. I love the vibrancy. I just look at this and it makes me super happy. So I knew I wanted this somewhere. And when I looked at the swatch in here, you can see it works with, it's picking up the blues on the sofa, the pink in the carpet. It was working with other things that were already in here. It worked with the pattern chairs. I knew it would be great. So I bought a vintage sofa, and then I actually had this slip cover made. So this is a slip cover, and that was a choice because I wanted it to feel a little bit more relaxed and a little different than the upholstery that I had on these sofas. It's just to like mix things up, so everything doesn't have the same sensibility necessarily, but everything works together. So this is kind of a statement piece now in the middle of the room, and all of these colors are, again, kind of setting a tone and setting a mood. It worked really well with this fabric on the dining chairs. These were dining chairs. These are vintage chairs that we had also in our previous apartment in a different color. And I reupholstered them in this sort of geometric stripe. You can see how these shapes sort of, let me just pull this up. You can see how this sort of rectangular pattern is kind of speaking to the rectangular pattern in the rug. So that's how those things are working together. They don't match, but they're speaking kind of the same language. I loved that vibrancy over here. Again, they're also practical because it's a pattern, it's colorful, they can hide things. This is not like a white silk. So these hide some sins, they hide some stains, and they're fun. So I love introducing that color over here, and then that's how the palette in the room all starts to work together. So as a kid, I always loved houses, and I thought I wanted to be an architect. I was very, very interested in houses, and I would draw them, and that was just always an interest of mine. But I think when I considered briefly becoming an architect or going to architecture school, it felt like very specific schooling, and I think feeling pigeonholed into that made me a little nervous when I got there, and it was like, well, maybe it's too technical, I don't know. So I didn't end up pursuing architecture, but I did always love houses as a kid. After college, when I got my first job for the Gap, that job was in fashion and retail, and that I think was really where my interest in fashion, and I didn't even know that that was a career. I didn't even know that that was a job. But when I got there, it was like, oh, there's this whole industry out there that is this really exciting mix of sort of right and left brain interests. It's like, we're running a business, these are huge businesses, it's math and it's business and it's all that stuff, but it's also about clothes and it's about trends and customers and retail and merchandising and like all this softer skills too that really appealed to me. So that's really where I started in fashion, and I worked the Gap for 5 years, then I moved to New York to work for J. Crew, and there again, that was when J. Crew was kind of having its renaissance, or one of its it's had a few, but that was really when, I think at the time, J. Crew was really known for their beautiful fabrics and beautiful colors. We would use Italian fabrics, we would use these Ratti prints. I mean, these were gorgeous, beautiful silk prints. That was like an exposure to a whole other world that really just opened my eyes to all of these beautiful materials, and learning from the design team there about color and how many shades. I mean, we would lay out a color palette for cashmere sweaters that, you know, a sweater that has 50 colors and you are going to choose all of those 50 colors. That to me is the most fun exercise that there could ever be. So that is, again, I think it's a combination of just innate artistry and seeing something and just saying, oh, I love that. That is just speaking to me. That I know, you know, that is like a best-selling color. That's going to be our #1 color. That is really where that kind of foundation of, I think, love for color really started. I worked at J. Crew for 7 years for a few reasons. When it was time to do something else, I went to Parsons in New York and I did their interior design program, which is a program it was like a 2-year thing for people who were already in other careers. And that was, again, my first real exposure to the technical side of design and I guess really more of the technical aspects. I had a lot of these softer skills with like color and fabric and material. I understood a lot of that from my first career in fashion, but understanding the technical part of the business, how do you lay out a room? I mean, there are a million things, and I've learned a million more things since then, because running a business and working with clients is a whole other education that didn't even come from Parsons. But that's really how that transition started. I'm just a person who is always drawn to color. It's like where I start. It's where I start a project. It's where I start a room. I can walk into someone's house and walk into someone's room, and it's the first thing that I think of. Like, how is this room going to feel? What is the envelope of the room going to be? I always think about your floors and your walls. Like, that is like the envelope of your room, right? That's gonna have the greatest impact on how the room looks and feels. So you need to really understand what those surfaces are going to be. And for me, they're always informed by color. So one really special piece of art here is this painting, because my husband and I bought this together as sort of a wedding gift to each other when we first got married. This artist is Natasha Law. I first saw her, I think I've told this story before, but I used to walk to work in New York, and I would walk along 9th Street in the Village. And so, you know, I had the same commute every day twice. And so in New York, like, half the fun is looking in people's windows, right? Because you're just on the sidewalk. And especially if it's a little later at night and the windows would be dark, you're looking into these gorgeous West Village townhouses, right? It was like, oh my gosh, like, how do these people live? And I would always see this painting in one of the houses that I loved. Of course, I had no idea what it was. And somewhere along the line, I guess I started researching it. I don't know. I figured out, I saw it in a magazine or something. I was like, oh, that's the artist. Her name's Natasha Law. So I figured out how much I loved her work. And we ended up buying this painting together as like a apartment wedding gift to each other. And I love it. Again, here you can see, I mean, I love the painting itself, but a huge part of that has to do with the colors in it. I was just so drawn to this finish and the color and how simple and clean it is. I just love it. And so, I mean, we've been married for 15 years now, so I guess this is 15 years old. And I still love it as much as I did the first time I saw it. So again, I think those things stay with you. I know I hear people say a lot, that, oh, I'm going to get sick of things, or especially people that maybe are a little bit afraid to invest in like a colorful sofa or whatever it is, wallpaper. And it's like, well, no, I'm going to get sick of that. And it's like, I don't really understand. I feel like if you love something, I have never gotten sick of anything. And I'm not sick of anything in here. And I've lived with these things for a long time. And I think if they really resonate with you initially, I think it stays that way. I think you get sick of things that you don't really like, that maybe you bought because you were in a time crunch, or you were like in a hurry, or you felt like, I think things that aren't initially so exciting to you that maybe you buy for one reason or another, those are the things I think that you end up replacing. I would never replace this piece of art. Again, I love to look at this. It makes me happy every day. I want to live with it all the time. So that is a really special piece in here. These sketches are also done by my husband, Henry. And I love the way that they, well, this wall is really big, right? So when you're figuring out what art to hang in your house, you really need to understand proportion and what size art you need for the wall that you are working with. And this wall needs something really big. If it were not this grid of small things, you would need to have a really large, one thing. But the grid worked so well here. You can see how it's also, again, it's sort of speaking back to the rug, the rectangles in the rug. Like, this is where all of the shapes are kind of working together. You can also see, like, we have these bookcases built in that we built in on that side of the wall. So there's like grid. It's like this geometry that sort of you keep coming back to, that to me is very aesthetically pleasing. It sort of creates some order in the room. And then the balance to that are these sort of florals, like a pattern that's looser, that's more organic, like what's on the sofa. That's the tension that works together. Something that's more rigid and maybe geometric, and something that's really loose and organic. And these here, I mean, they're so special because he did them, but they're different. And the black and white here is a nice also balance to all of the color in the room. This was meant to be like, what if we were going to have a more formal dinner or like a Thanksgiving dinner or something, that was meant to be here. And we do those things. This table extends, so now it's a little shorter since the tree is here, but usually it's a little bit longer. But I liked also when we built this window seat into it, part of it was like trying to create that mood that is a little bit more casual. So it was like, okay, well, you can be sitting here and maybe a couple people are sitting back there and you're all kind of talking, and it doesn't feel so stiff. It doesn't feel, we do use this more casually or regularly because, again, this is our main TV. So if usually my boys and my husband, if they're watching a movie or whatever and like eating dinner, they're sitting here watching the TV. So we do use this pretty often. This is a vintage table, so it has some use on it. Again, it doesn't feel super pristine. I like things to have a little bit more, I like things to look very sophisticated, but they can also be relaxed. Like, sophisticated doesn't have to mean serious, and like that it feels like you have to, sit like this. It's like you can be relaxed here, but I think this room still feels stylish and done, but it also, this is like a family space, and we built these bookcases in when we did the renovation too, also because we had a lot of books that needed to be stored somewhere for the most part, but bookcases make a room feel inviting. When you said to make a room feel warm and inviting, books will do that for you on their own. So that also just makes this feel like, okay, you can lie here and it feels a little more den-like or a little more library-like, just having the bookcases. And I wanted them to be all around the window in this really pretty color. It also balances the room because you have the built-ins on that side, so it kind of needed that balance over here, so it's sort of weighted equally. You don't want like everything heavy on one side, and then like if I just had this table here and nothing here, it's just not, it wouldn't, the visual weight of that wouldn't feel right. So yeah, this can also be a more casual space. This is another vintage piece that I got maybe a year or so ago that I love. I love the warmth of that wood. I think one thing that I was trying to do is always try to make sure that the room feels warm. When we have like white walls and these sort of black windows, that can feel a little on the colder side. It's modern, so you need all of these other tones to to balance things out so it doesn't feel, I don't want a black and white room. To me, that feels very cold. So that's why when you bring in all of these warm woods, it helps that feel and it helps that kind of tonality. Next, we're going to walk into our kitchen, so follow me this way. And here we are. You can see here that, again, like if the house is sort of a square, we've got the staircase in the middle, that living space is on the one side of the square, and the kitchen is on the other. So we made the kitchen be this whole half of the square. When we bought the house, there was a wall here, and the kitchen was here, and there was a more formal dining room here. But for our needs and just wanting more open space, we needed a bigger kitchen, actual cooking space. I wanted a table here, a real proper kitchen table. So we just opened it into one big area, which works really well for us. Here at the table, this is our everyday space. This is homework space. You know, this is like everything space. So I love this pedestal table. It's a classic Saarinen that works in every room you've ever seen it in, a classic for a reason. I think the other element here, again, that was important to me to incorporate was color. So I guess, why don't we start here with the cabinetry, because that's probably the biggest decision that you're gonna make in a kitchen. So the cabinets are Faro and Ball railings, which is a very, very dark navy. Sometimes almost looks, it's not black, but it's a really, really dark navy. So sometimes people think it's almost black or like a really dark gray, but it's actually just a really, really deep navy. I tried some other colors, and I settled on this one for a few reasons. Well, one, I just love navy. So for me, navy is such a classic color, but it's not black. And it's, again, for me, it's really easy to live with. I don't tire of it. I just don't. I wear a lot of navy clothes. I love living with it. It gives me a little color, but it's not anything that feels so specific, like it feels trendy. Navy's not trendy. To me, navy is like always, and navy is just classic. But it's dark and it's deep. And that, I really like that in here. So I think that was the first decision, the cabinet color, which is railings. So another big decision in here with the cabinetry was adding these open shelves, which we have here, and then going around the corner there. So I know open shelving is also a controversial topic in design. My personal opinion is that I like to have a mix of both. So I wouldn't want all open or all closed. I like a little mix. And the reason I like these, for me, they're super easy. Our dishwasher is right here. So when you're unloading the dishwasher, you always have to think about, this is the practical side of design, you always have to think about, you gotta be close to everything that's coming out of the dishwashers, you want it to be right here, right? So these are our utensil drawers, because I'm gonna take the utensils from the dishwasher and put them away right here. And then the everyday dishes, which are cereal bowls, this is the stuff that is every day that my family uses. So it's right here in the dishwasher, and I go right here. And it never really moves any further than that, other than to the table. There's no cabinet doors to even open or close. So for me, this is not hard to maintain. People always say, oh, but they're gonna get messy or they look bad. And it's like, I mean, it's not, for me, I can stack just plain plates. They're just white. These are bowls from Crate & Barrel. These are not fancy. But they're simple and they look perfectly fine in a stack, and I'm not merchandising them. I'm not doing anything to them to make them look any certain way. You're just gonna put them here, and to me, they look fine. So I like that simplicity and the openness of how that feels for some things. Again, I would not want it everywhere, but for me, I like that. And over here, we just like, again, these are the glasses that we use every day. So they're just going here to here to here, no further. So it's not difficult, I think, to maintain or clean or any of that stuff. Now, on the other hand, you know, when you have lots of ugly things, necessary, but ugly, whatever, bottles and things, I don't want to look at all of this. So this is where I want a closed cabinet, because I don't want to see all these messy labels, all of this clutter, I don't want to look at that. So that's why I like closed cabinetry for some things, but the open shelves to me helps the space feel more open, and I think it's easy to use. Here, just like the materials we chose, I like the warmth of the wood, of the shelves. We did these sort of metal rods that make it look like they're being suspended from the ceiling. It's just clean and simple. Again, you have to think about warm materials and cold materials. Like wood is warm, the tile is cold. You always want the balance of those things so the space feels warm. Another big decision are countertops, which is always a hard one for clients and everybody. These are soapstone countertops. I love them. I think that their natural characteristics are so beautiful. I love the veining. I love the kind of plays of like, sometimes they have a little blue in them. Sometimes they look more blue. Sometimes they look more gray. Sometimes they look black. It's sort of all a variation, depends on the slab that you choose. But I just love the natural beauty of them. I love the way that they worked with a dark cabinet. So even though they are a little bit soft and they can scratch, you can see little scratches on them. They're not perfect, so they're not totally indestructible. They're a natural material. They're busy enough that I don't really see it that much, or if I do see it, it just doesn't really bother me. So I have loved living with the soapstone, and I just find like the natural beauty of it really pretty. This is a new floor here. So because the kitchen was a total gut job, this is a new floor in the house. The other floors were just refinished, so we just refinished those to match this. But my contractor likes to say, like, this is the only level floor in the whole house since the house is really old. But here, this is white oak, and I chose the herringbone for in here to just mix it up. It's just more interest that you can add to the floor, basically. But it's very classic. This is just white oak. But I like that it feels, I don't know, maybe it feels a little bit playful, but at the same time, the herringbone is super classic. Again, these are like classic choices. These are things that have been around for a million years. So this is nothing new and trendy, but it just kind of gives more dimension to the room in this kind of long, now that it is such a long, open rectangle, I like the way that looked. And then we did add these beams to the ceiling. That's really, again, these are just for warmth. Like here, these ceilings are 10 feet tall, and I knew that they needed a little something just so you didn't feel a whole expanse of white drywall. That never feels that good. So the beams are breaking it up. They're adding visual interest, they're adding texture, and they're just like giving you all that warmth. I didn't originally have these two beams in the eating area, but we needed them because after living here for a few months, I just felt like this space needed something else. It has a lot of windows, which is great, but I needed warmth in here to balance a lot of glass. And so we added these beams here. And then of course the ceiling wallpaper, which is really important. And that was also just for pattern, to liven this up and to kind of connect these two. The tones in the wallpaper work with the cabinetry and the soapstone. So then that's kind of like bringing the two together. People, every time they want to ask you about design trends and what's in or out, subway tile often gets on the out list, like, oh, I'm sick of it. And I mean, again, it's classic for a reason. I'm not sick of it. I just like it here as a neutral, sort of clean backdrop. Again, I have a lot of other things going on, so I didn't also need the tile to be like a major statement. Sometimes you kind of want to pick your spots of like, what do I want to feel super focal, or what do I want to register? And I love beautiful tile of all kinds, but in here, I had enough, I felt like, other things going on that the tile could just be simple. And I do like a lot of tile, so I did want, like, that's why we continued it all around the windows, all around the door casings here, all around the shelving, all the way to here. It's not just up to here as the backsplash, and then, because then you're just dealing with more drywall, which is always your least interesting choice. So more tile, I think, is better. And this is white subway tile. It's inexpensive, it's not fancy, so the more the better. This is where the original house stopped. So again, it was just really like a square. And so this is the addition that we put on. And the reason that we did this was, so originally the house had a detached garage, and I really wanted to attach the garage to the house. It's cold in Pittsburgh, and I wanted to be able to pull into the garage and come right into the house without having to go outside. So the original idea was that we would just attach the garage to the house, and we sort of had this flat space in the yard between the two that lent itself pretty naturally to this breezeway space. And then also what the breezeway is functioning as is really like a mudroom. So we didn't have any storage on the first floor. All we have now is we've got like one small coat closet under the stairs, but we don't have any other storage. So the breezeway was also an opportunity to act as a mudroom and add all of that storage for all of the things that everyone has, and the mudroom that every family needs, that I feel like I end up adding to all my clients' houses when they don't have one, because you have all the kids' backpacks, all the coats, all the shoes, all of the things. So that was really what this space was designed to do, just to connect our garage to the main house. My office is now at the end there, and that's above the garage, but the functionality piece was that I wanted the garage to be connected to the house, and we needed this storage for coats, shoes, mudroom kind of stuff. So design-wise, all we did here, this is just cabinetry that is the same color, it's the same railings, it's the same cabinet profile, everything's the same as what's going on in the kitchen. I just felt like I wanted to see sort of one continuous line of the same idea. And I kept the hardware the same, and for me, I wanted these to be closed cabinets. This is another topic of when I design people's mudrooms. We talk a lot about, is it open, is it hooks, is it shelves, what is it? For me, I don't want to see the stuff. Like, I don't want to see the clutter of life and the messiness of my kids, God knows what, that they have in there. I can close the doors and it can kind of all go away. So for me, it was important that the cabinets be closed. Every person in my family, we have our own, I'll open one to show you, but we have our own kind of double locker. So it's great, really functional storage. The other things in here that are kind of important choices design-wise are the floor. So this floor is tile that looks like wood, but it is actually porcelain tile, which most people are surprised to learn, since it really is a good approximation for wood. But in a mudroom, it's important that you have a really durable floor, because people are coming in here with messy shoes and boots and all the junk, and it's wet or snow or whatever. So you need your floor to be really pretty indestructible, and tile is. So I love that, but I love that the wood look of this, again, brings all that texture, brings all that warmth. We have these wood beams up here, so they're kind of working together. And I love this floor. I've used this floor in other projects or different colors of this, but it's really a great material. This is my office, and maybe it's in like a halfway point of like not as messy as it usually is, but we're always in a state of trying to figure out the best way to keep all the samples organized. So now we're in a new process of reorganizing the entire cork wall behind my desk, so that's why that looks a little half empty. But like I was saying before, what I really just wanted in here was a lot of natural light, which we have. So we're above my garage right now. So the garage is below, and then the office is above. So we have all these nice windows here. We get so much nice light in here at all times of the day, even when, again, Pittsburgh is kind of a gray city. And despite that, it always feels, I think, it feels pretty nice and bright and light in here, despite the weather. And the materials are just pretty simple. This is just white oak floors, white oak beams, and white oak cabinetry, and to keep things very simple, I love this desk. I wanted a really big desk, so this is a table from Blue Dot. So that is a corkboard, which is great, which my contractor just did for me, because I was just like, yeah, I just want a whole wall of cork so I can just stick things up there that I want to look at. And so now we're in this process of trying to reorganize it by project. So that's in the works, But yeah, that's a whole wall of cork. And otherwise, we have storage on this wall with these bookshelves, and this is where we keep all of our fabric samples, wallpaper samples. Again, this is a literally constant work in progress of how do we best organize everything, because we have thousands of materials in here, and it is very hard to keep them all where you want them to be. But I like to work on the floor a lot. That to me just, I don't know why, I don't mind sitting on the floor, and I like looking at all my materials and just like pulling things out and doing things like that. So I often have, the floor is often covered with swatches and papers and things, but I sort of like to work that way. This is our primary bedroom. And yeah, you can see, I mean, it feels a little softer in here color-wise, which I think feels appropriate for a bedroom. The starting point in here were these panels, which are wallpaper panels that we had in our prior apartment. There are 3 of them. And the nice thing about these is that you can see how they're just framed like a piece of art here. So they're just hung on the wall. They're not, the wallpaper's not installed on the wall. These are just, this is like basically functioning as a piece of art. So you can take it with you. And when we were renovating the house, I thought we didn't have another spot for that. And I thought that would be perfect here and really set the tone for the colors in the room and just like the mood. I love those. Without it having to be on all of the walls. So that was the starting point for the color palette. And then the paint color in here is called Pen Noir by Faro and Ball, which is a color I like to use a lot. If any of my clients are listening to this, they might have it in their own houses because I do like to use it. It's very soft, but it's also very warm. And sometimes when you try to use softer, lighter colors, they can veer into pastel territory that aren't great. That's why people sometimes say like, oh, it looks like a baby nursery, because you get that sort of saccharine sweetness with like a pale pink or pale blue, or this is more like a lavender. Sometimes you can get into that zone if you're not careful. And the reason this color really works, this is also a Faro and Ball color, that their pigments are, they're just more nuanced. And so the colors get a little muddier and they just have more depth to them than others. So when you're in this zone, you don't need it all the time, but when you're in this zone of like pale pink, pale lavender, I like to use theirs. To me, this sets the tone, but it doesn't feel saccharine. It doesn't feel sweet. You don't walk in here and feel like you're in like a little girl's room or something. It feels sophisticated, but it has that lightness and warmth at the same time. So that was really the palette. Like, it's a neutral carpet. That was the wall color. I knew that the panels were going to be on the wall behind the bed. And then what was next in here? Probably the bed. So I think the bed I did next with that green linen headboard. I love that color, working with the panels behind it. I liked a really modern light fixture. I like how this is black. It's like that punctuation in a room. It feels more contemporary. Again, I don't want this to feel like a dollhouse or like overly sweet. And I'm not a huge, I don't want 100 crystal chandeliers everywhere with lots of like frilly stuff. Like I like that balance of femininity, and there is a feminine feel, but there are also pieces in here that sort of balance that. The dresser, the wood, the lacquer, like this feels a little more contemporary. The black floor lamps, they feel a little more contemporary. And then we have some more modern art in here, which I love this photograph. I'm not gonna remember who the photographer is right now, but I love the scale of this. I love the depth of this. I think another important thing to think about when clients talk to me about art is not just paintings. I think a lot of people have just paintings and they think like, I need art, and they imagine something that looks like water lilies. And it's like, there's so much more out there than that. And other mediums like photography bring your room so much more, because you feel like you're looking into this photograph. It's like giving the whole room like that sort of depth perception. If this were just a flat piece, if this were like a flat watercolor painting, it doesn't open the room up. It doesn't do any of those things. So I think understanding how art and different kinds of art really impact the feeling of a room is important. But But yeah, I wanted the mood in here to feel kind of calm and quiet. These are vintage chairs that I recovered, I think, before ivory boucle became such a, they're not technically boucle, but they're close. But I just wanted it to be, you know, calm. In here, we're up on the second floor, obviously. The trees are sort of bare here in Pittsburgh now, but like, it's quiet up here, and the trees are, you kind of feel a little treehousey when you're up here. If I can lie in bed and I'm just like seeing lots of leaves, it's nice. It's calming. It feels, this tree out here is a good one. It's just like, again, maybe not today in the winter, but I wanted that quiet and calm in here, and I think it really feels like that. Thank you, Homeworthy. Thank you for taking a tour of my house today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.